Now, after the delivery of the State of the Nation address, there has been reaction from a cross-section of people, the economists, the general public, but also the political class. We at Morning at NTV earlier were on and about the fact that the State of the Nation address was, well, not up to par with the expectations. I have with me analysts who are going to help us understand what were the hits, what were the misses, and what exactly should we look forward to in light of the information and the analysis that was delivered and given to us as a country by the head of state as required by the Constitution. I have with me Sarah Bireete. She is the Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Many thanks for making it.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Good morning,
viewers.
I also have with us Kassim, Kamugisha, the Deputy Resident District Commissioner for Nakawa. Many thanks for making time.
Thank you very much, Chris, for inviting me. Good morning, viewers.
Well, let me begin by sharing what a State of the Nation address essentially is. It is more like a look at the economic and political condition of a country. What is, what ought to be, what can be. The State of the Nation address is delivered annually as one of the mandates by the President to offer accountability to the country on the things that have been achieved, undertaken over the past 1 year, and how the President and the government or administration in place intends to build on the achievements and rectify anything that might not have worked in the previous 1 year. If we were to take the example of the United States, the UK, and any other country that, of course, do hold these annual events, it is an elaborate demonstration on the part of government on what is happening at all levels of society, be it the economics, the politics, society, and the arts. Today being a Friday on Morning at NTV, we do pay attention to the arts industry, looking at the music, and given the fact that Uganda's population is largely youth, many youth were waiting to hear what in the arts industry, what in the creatives is the President working on, what has been laid out by the government to help them access much needed funds, much needed tools, much needed equipment, or even to be able to understand which doors are open, where and how, in order to move forward in terms of what their creative activities are, and to be able to get jobs and be part of the greater agenda that is economic transformation, that is productivity. The President didn't talk about that. And if there is any youth out there who was listening to the President, maybe they are as disappointed as anyone could be. That is the youth. Pensioners too were waiting for the President to reassure them about what is happening with regard to their money and the consistency with which, or lack of it, for example, that it does come in. Public servants over the last 2 months have been told exclusively from the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ministry of Health, that money will not be coming as expected. That also creates anxiety, and anyone, for example, could be in the far-flung areas, Butaleja or Zombo, was waiting for the President to speak about the fact that, well, your money will be coming, and this is what is happening. Understand the delay. The President was very silent about that. The President on this time, or rather on this occasion, as he has done on many occasions, went on and about lecturing the country on strategic and pan-Africanist sentiment. We do not, of course, say this is something that shouldn't be done. We love the fact that Africa is something that we must pay attention to. East African community, yes, all interventions are welcome. But should the President be looking at things that way? Or I am totally wrong in my understanding of these matters. Let me first go to the Deputy RCC. And this is because as a Deputy RCC, you are effectively an officer of the President in your locality, Nakawa. When you were anticipating the State of the Nation address, there are things that you wanted to desperately hear and things that you think people ought to have listened to. Did the President deliver? Or you might be there and you're also saying, oh, the President did talk about the critical things that I wanted to hear. Let's be honest about it.
Thank you, Chris. Allow me to use this opportunity to wish the pilgrims traveling for Hijjah. A safe journey.
That is right.
Thank you
very much.
Quite a large number has reached in Medina. They are crossing to Mecca in the next 2 days. And the Uganda Airlines is taking off today with another big number of people. So I want to wish all pilgrims a safe journey, but also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your prayers, because you have gone specifically for worship.
Yeah.
Back to your question, Chris, without doubt, the head of state, as mandated by the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, indeed executed his constitutional mandate, and Article 101(1) of the Delivering State of Nation address, and in my opinion, and opinion of the bigger population, though there could be dissenting voices, which is also acceptable in a democracy like this one, he really delivered as expected, because his speech had pointers which were guiding the speech, and
that's right.
And the first pointers were what he called the three historical missions of the revolution, and that was prosperity for all Africans. And this speaks to a bigger volume of Africa, that they are not selfish in having Ugandans prosper alone. It should be an issue of Africa, because if we prosper and we are producing much, we need market. And market can't be wholesomely found in Uganda. We need a strategic partnership with other states so that we can be able to sell and have money in our pockets. The president also talked about strategic security for Africa and of course Uganda.
That's right.
Uganda cannot be secure alone as a country. And therefore, to secure Uganda properly, you have to secure Africa. And of course the president saying this is practical, because whereas there could be dissenting voices about how our forces are in different countries, but they are there because Congo must be secure, South Sudan must be secure, Somalia must be secure, Central African Republic must be secure, so that in the end Uganda becomes secure, not by having itself and the borders secure, but strategically a secure region and Africa. And the president really made mention that if Africans had thought in that line before 1900, wouldn't have been colonized, because the reason why we were taken over was because we were weaker in terms of our security as the smaller states of Africa by the time. So his emphasis on strategic security was really spot on, though of course people would have expected him to speak about criminality in the country, but we have got the IGP, we have got the security agencies in the country. That is their role. And of course he was spot on with the security of an African population. But also he made mention of something very, very critical, that we cannot be secure and we cannot prosper unless we value the brotherhood we have as Africans. And he made mention that Africa has got clusters. You'll find Nilotics, Nilohamites, the Bantu, and the Kushites. Now, we are bound by brotherhood. So if we take advantage of this brotherhood, and each one concentrates on consolidating what within that brotherhood is their strength, then you have a prosperous Africa and a secure Africa. Actually, he gave an example and said, if we were a brotherhood, if we had worked on strategic security, a country like Libya wouldn't have collapsed. So the president actually was not only addressing Ugandans, but he was addressing Africans.
Yes.
All right. Allow me stay with you very shortly before I come to Sarah Bireete.
Still talking about the collapse of
When
Libya.
you say the president was talking to the whole of Africa,
yes,
and not only Uganda, the president has the opportunity many times to speak to Africa. Just the other day he was in Nairobi and he was able to deliver sentiment on what he thinks Africa should be undertaking and what particular direction should be moving,
yes,
and all the leaders. That was an excellent opportunity to speak to Africa. The state of the nation is state of the nation. It is not state of the continent. And the person in Butaleja might well understand the ideological issues regarding strategic security and why security in another country guarantees our own security. But their most pressing issue is not what happens in Libya, it's not why the Central African Republic is the way it is. There are issues that are pain points on a daily basis. And that is what the president needed to speak to the people about. I'll be coming to Sarah Bireete very shortly, but as a citizen of the nation, do you want the president to continue to lecture the nation when he has an opportunity to speak to it intimately and leave all these ideological speeches and lectures for another occasion?
You see, Chris, whereas the law gives the president a mandate to speak to Uganda in its own State of Nation address, it doesn't limit him that his speech should end here. So if the speech crosses to Africa, I don't see any problem with it. And number two, and number two, Chris. All right. It would be really very absurd if we think that a person in Kabale does not need to know what is happening in Congo.
Not that they not need to know. There are so many other opportunities for that person to understand the dynamics of ideology and strategic issues. So the president has a lot of chances to talk about.
Very true.
The State of the Nation address, it's like a father in the home. You have an opportunity to talk about your children's fees, their feeding, and everything that is happening with them. And then the day you sit them on the dining table to talk to them, it could be, well, any other place in the house. You begin talking about issues in Nakawa, you know, how people were evicted and how your sentiments about that eviction are. The children were waiting to hear. We've eaten one particular type of food for the whole month. Can't you change? And you're telling them about eviction in another place.
You see, the context matters, please. For example,
Sarah, don't worry. There's something
a person in Kisoro would want to know how the regional leaders are thinking about security of Bunagana. Why? Because what happens in Bunagana has got an impact on what is happening in Kisoro. So the president really wasn't wrong in any way to highlight their approach toward the security of Africa, which feeds into security of Uganda, but also facilitates production, facilitates commerce in the country, which affects the indigenous Uganda here. So therefore, whereas you are right to say that the president would have tackled what some wanted it here, but the bigger pressure says the president addressed what was within their concerns.
Okay.
Number two, it would be really, I would be disturbed if we wholesomely say the president didn't make mention of issues affecting the population. The president made mention of for example, the development funds. Some people are winding them up and saying PDM, Emyoga, WEP, they are there and they are working. Yes, they are there, they are working. It was the executive which passed a policy that went to Parliament, and Parliament allocated money. And the president made mention of these ones. Maybe if we were waiting to hear the figures, that's where we could say maybe the writers of the speech missed out such an element. But he made mention of that. Then he made mention of for example, education. You see, a population can progress, but there are facilitators of progress in transformation in this population. And one of them is an enlightened population.
Enlightened population.
Because you see, the population of Uganda does not only feed in Uganda as a country. At some point, whereas there are debates of what quality of labor we are exporting, but we need to export this labor, and it has to be enlightened. But also the president made mention of how the economy is doing. For example, he showed that we have got, we are producing 600,000 metric tons of sugar, and our consumption is 80,000 metric tons. And he says, then who is in this production? This production is in by Ugandans and investors.
Okay.
So the president really touched many aspects. But you see, there's what people would want to hear, because it is what is happening on the streets. For example, the issue of corruption. It has been spoken by everybody.
Yeah, we shall be coming to the issue of corruption because it's a really huge issue, one that cannot be offered the kind of this paragraphs that were offered in this particular speech. He needed to speak a little bit more about it, and the tone too. But thank you very much. We shall be coming back to you very shortly. Let me co-opting Sarah Bireete. You've listened to Kassim Kamugisha. I deliberately needed him to elaborate this because he is an officer of the president, being the deputy RCC rather. But my concerns may be not valid. I might have expected something else as a citizen, but the president has the mandate to talk about anything that he deemed necessary, or rather he deems necessary at any particular moment in time. Am I wrong to insist that the president has so many opportunities to talk about so much, to the extent that a state of the nation, apparently or personally, I would expect him to settle for the things that Uganda are paining the Ugandans?
You know, we are dealing with the president because this was his 38th State of Nation address. We are dealing with a president who is stuck in history, who is stuck in theories, and who cannot address citizens' practical needs. You know, the reference, and I will use the reference to Gaddafi to demonstrate my point. Gaddafi died in 2011. 13 years down the road, you are still addressing your citizens on how Africa betrayed Gaddafi. 13 years down the road. You were a critical actor on the African stage then. You are part of the African leaders that betrayed Gaddafi through your actions or inactions. So what should Ugandans do about that? So this is the mindset of the president. He talks about beautiful pan-Africanism. He is a pan-Africanist, but theoretical. Because what practical? Other than pushing for the East African Federation, also where other citizens of East Africa think he is a problem to the Federation for failure to transit in his own country. But he passionately pushes for that, although he's also a roadblock to the East African Federation. So you have, theoretically, his mind is in the right place. Practically, nothing. He was talking about the challenges of East African community. East African community laid down properly the stages of integration with a clear timeline. The founders of the second East African community, he's the only one alive. But he's also stuck in his chair, blocking the federation. One of the bigger disagreements for East African integration was absence of the term limits in Uganda. So does he also take responsibility for that as a president? The first major disagreement was absence of term limits, which caused the protocol on democracy and good governance in the East African community to remain on the shelf up to today. Then later he infected Rwanda, which also removed the term limits. But he was the first roadblock.
Infected
yes. So does he take accountability for such decisions himself? So the reason East Africa is failing, of course he talked about trade wars in the East African community, but he was part that broke that bond of East African Federation. But I want to go to what the State of Nation address should have been. You can meander around East Africa, global issues, we are in the global village. But can you later, that should be part of the preamble, it shouldn't be the whole speech. When you come to the body of the State of Nation address, you should talk about what is mandated, because it's a constitutional obligation. The Constitution is very clear. Say, account for the past year and give direction for the way forward. In the 2023 State of Nation address, the president had a 17 agenda speech, and the number 14 on that agenda was corruption. But also in that speech, he gave a statement that showed the resigned chief executive office of a country. He said even God is there For the corrupt, God is there in 2023. Now come this year, he's praising people in the spotlight for exposing corruption. So I don't know whether it was a sarcastic kind of approach to the crisis we are in, or he has lost touch with reality. Because when you say that I have evidence of budget corruption between the Ministry of Finance and Parliament, and all supplementary budgets are a result of corruption, because that's what he was telling the country. And we have been talking about a crisis of supplementary budgets that has completely turned the budget process into a big fraud this country has ever witnessed. Now the president comes up and says, I have my evidence. You people are in trouble. Then he says he's thanking the head of parliament, where he has evidence of budgetary corruption, for exposing corruption. We have been talking of how money is hidden in classified expenditures and returned to Parliament for bribing MPs. But if you are a chief executive officer of a country that loses a third of its revenue every year to corruption, at times more than a third, because we have been collecting, it's only in this year that we envisage to collect 32 trillion as our revenue. So that makes it a third, the 10 trillion that we lose to corruption according to IGG. And maybe the statistics could have changed, because this is 2 years ago. So if we lose 10 trillion of whatever we collect to corruption, you are losing more than a third of your income to corruption. Do we then expect a president to come and say, I have my evidence? He should have said, 1, 2, 3, 4 people are in custody because I have this evidence. And I can bet on this show that the so-called evidence will not materialize into any prosecution to stop corruption.
Let's return to, of course, I'm glad the fact that you've ended with that corruption note is something that Kassim Kamugisha was beginning to debate before I interjected in order to allow you also have your submission on the State of the Nation address. Hearing the President, Mr. Kassim Kamugisha, the tone with which he fights corruption is one that emboldens the corrupt. If I have stolen money and I hear the one who is supposed to come after me laugh about it, joke about it, ask the audience whether
they need bread or not.
They need, you know, and then there is that exchange that is very casual. What does it tell the corrupt?
You see, Chris, I'm happy that our sister, Dr. Sarah, brought out point number 14 of the last
State of the Nation address, corruption.
Corruption, where the president says,
even God is watching.
And very
the moment, if I'm a thief and I hear you going to God, I know
Chris,
I've beaten you at it.
God was watching, he provided the way, and this time the president is telling you
he has evidence.
He has got evidence.
All right.
Now, that means there is will to fight corruption. But what we might disagree as a nation is in the approach.
The approach.
There are people who think that the president, being the president of the fountain of honor, should be the one
whipping about.
We actually arresting Chris or Kassim Kamugisha because of corruption. But the country of Uganda has got a constitution which established institutions in 1994-95. These constitutions have got a mandate. I'm lucky to be having a senior counsel here. She knows about the jail sector.
Yes.
The jail sector does not have the president as the start end and the end point. The jail sector has got police, has got DPP, has got judicial involved, and finally a conviction and a sentence. So if we expect the president to be at the tail end, then we shall be expecting the president to make a blunder. And we shall now begin criticizing the president for having undermined the institutions which his executive put in place. Now, what we will have to wait to hear is if he has got evidence. whom has he given this evidence to have these people brought to law so they can be dealt upon as the law says? Then number two, it is very intriguing because I've been reading the president's speech. I didn't see it on record where he thanked the Speaker of Parliament.
You didn't watch?
No, may have got the speech. It's not on record that in his speech it is written there. I think what the president was thanking the Speaker about, because I was following, was the relationship between the executive and the legislature. Because he made mention that there were times where there could be bad rubbing of shoulders between the executive and the legislature.
He actually suggested that it's wrong to expect that a speaker who is always on divergent ends with government is the one that's doing the job.
Exactly.
Okay. He said that it's okay many times when a speaker doesn't appear to be against the government or criticizing the government at all times, they are also actually doing the job effectively.
Exactly.
He stayed clear. He didn't say the speaker had actually fought corruption.
That also is not written.
Now,
saying you are following the written script.
let me keep to a narrative that you have brought about. The fact that the president is not the start point and is not the end point, and that all the agencies that are fighting corruption should not expect him to come in whipping. We have a case, and this is one that has been covered by the newspapers today. An ex-UNRWA engineer who is accused of making off with 6.2 billion Uganda shillings is seeking an out-of-court settlement, and the IGG is very heavily involved in this matter. What is intriguing about this case is the fact that this gentleman has asked the IGG and the courts for an out-of-court settlement on this particular issue. And what we know now is that an investigation is underway to ascertain whether the assets he's willing to return are actually worth the money that he stole. That is a misnomer. The fact that people will know that if I steal money, whichever amount, I'll be able to seek an out-of-court settlement so that I can be able to refund. It means you can still go do business and that money makes profits for you, and then you bring back some of it. And by that, you've enriched yourself, but you've been able to avoid the law. Those are the agencies we're working with. The very agencies, including the IG, the Inspector General of Government, Betty Kamya, is on the spot for allowing to talk to 3 officials who had been implicated in the theft of money and begging them to return a bit of that money. So there's a bit of trouble there. The president should be able to preside over sentiments like that so that the IGG knows in fighting corruption, do not sit on the same table with the corrupt to decide how they are going to pay back.
You see, Chris, we have to interrogate our roles and really ask these roles that, is what this man asking for legal? Out of court settlement. Is it provided for by the law? Yes. If it is a matter of law, then we now come back to the matter of morality, that he's a thief. So these are 2 things which are happening. For us, we don't want to listen to another bit of law which provides for that window of settlement, if it is there. So if he has taken that line, he could be right legally. But now we have to question on the morality
the moral aspect of it. And that is where the president must preside and be very emphatic about.
Yeah, legally there's a provision for plea bargain for a linear sentence. And also we have the law for asset recovery of the money stolen through corruption. So I think those are the 2 elements of the law that you're talking about. But they shouldn't get, go scot-free.
It shouldn't be a gate of escape.
Yeah, you mitigate your sentence.
Exactly.
You mitigate your punishment.
So for me, what I wouldn't want to really encourage is seeing the president being the beginning point of whipping the corrupt and the end point, because then that makes the whole general sector irrelevant. We should be questioning our, for example, Financial Intelligence Authority, number 1. If someone stole 6.2 billion, in what spell didn't you detect this? What are you doing on the job? If we have got a whistleblower who was, for example, involved with the CIID, what have they done? What are their findings? So we should be really questioning the whole general sector and other institutions of government allied to this. Then if the president fails to take action when there is evidence, as he said, then we come back and here and say, Your Excellency, this is what we expected after you had evidence, and you have failed us. But we don't have to pile blame before other institutions get involved. And finally, Chris, of course, corruption is a cancer which has lived with mankind. That is why it is mentioned in the Bible, it is in the Quran. And in 1971, some of the reasons for the coup was rampant corruption, for us who did some political science. But also in 1986, when this government was coming in place, one of the talking 10 points program, one of them was corruption, fighting corruption. So it is part of us. I think what was betraying us in the past were the institutions. Now we should ask the institutions which have got the mandate and responsibility to fight corruption. They should give us the results. We should not see the IGG, for example, crying on TV. Yeah. We should see her moving with other state institutions to crack a whip. So really, I think there's something we have really to combine efforts, condemn, but also see action being taken by those ones entrusted by authority to take action.
All right. In listening to the president, did you, Sarah Bireete, see a man who is listening to the cries of the people? Does the State of the Nation address capture the president's sentiment, the president's sense of empathy, so to speak, with the people who are suffering as a result of the tightness of the economy?
You know, the president always sounds like a leader who knows what to do, but also who would never do what he ought to do in favor of getting re-elected continuously. So the problem of Uganda is not that the people in office don't know what our problem is or what they should be doing, but they keep mitigating the problems, shortchanging the citizens in exchange for keeping power. And that's how corruption has become a tool for NRM's power retention. It's part of the strategy. So when you have, like in the preamble, I also listened to the speaker giving account of what they've achieved as parliament. And in those achievements, she was happy to announce to the nation on how she's a chair of the Commonwealth Speakers Forum, and how her deputy is a vice chair, but Uganda is also chairing the Africa Commonwealth Speakers Forum. So, but at the same time, and in the same year, she's under sanctions by the mother of Commonwealth, meaning that she cannot participate anymore in those meetings. And in her speech, she did not mention that. So that's where a balance sheet, because a State of Nation address should be a balance sheet. We planned to do ABC, we've achieved A, B is work in progress, but we failed on C. So even the speaker should have said that as much as we lobbied to chair this platform, I'm now prohibited from stepping in this platform because she cannot again attend any Commonwealth meeting because of the sanctions. So you come to the president who did not also give a statement of account or did not give a country a balance sheet. The budget for the outgoing financial year had a focus, and now we are under program budgeting. So the summary of the State of Nation address should have been that we set out to do, or we set out to go to Nairobi through Jinja, but we are stuck somewhere after Jinja. So we managed to move these kilometers. The rest of the programs, because some of the programs are continuous, especially infrastructure. You said the rest of the programs we managed to lay foundation, and we are still on our way to Jinja. But when it comes to issues like fighting corruption, issues like mitigating the cost of living of Ugandans, creating jobs and the rest, we have failed. We still have an exodus of young people going into slavery in the Middle East without proper mechanism for their protection. People still receive dead bodies and very sick people. Those who went to look for jobs in the Middle East. On the economic front, the president was happy to announce that Uganda is at the floor of middle income status, the lower middle income status. But at the same time, you have Bank of Uganda data, which shows that only 1% of Ugandans earn 1 million and above. 60% of working Ugandans earn 200,000
Uganda shillings.
So if the working class is not in middle income status, we are only talking maybe of business community. This is the government data. We also have data from URA, which shows that 93% of the big taxpayers have closed business. And Bank of Uganda 2 days ago said the private sector is weaker. And you have a budget where you intend to borrow 29 trillion, depriving the private sector of resources. So what direction are you giving a country at the economic front? That's
a question for you.
Flowing from where Sarah is coming from, there is no law which says that the working class is the one which measures the middle income status. In any case, the working class of Uganda is in terms of the formal employment, is a very small fraction, because what is the base of our public service? If we added on the private, those ones in non-governmental organizations and the rest, it could come to 1.5 million, 2 million at the most. So that cannot be a measure of people in middle income on what they earn. I think we should be looking at what have the government programs been targeting. Have they been targeting the working class in government, or they have been targeting our people in informal sector, our people in agriculture? And if they have been targeting them, what are the indicative figures from UBOS in terms of progress in agriculture, in terms of the business class in Chikubu? So if they have been stagnant, if a businessman tells you he's earning 200,000 per month, then we can say there is a problem with middle income status.
We saw the business community in Kororo.
Yeah, the business community was in Kororo because of something which they had not been
the president told them
about.
yesterday he's not giving any money or support to people who are importing
clothes
clothes for dead people. He's willing to support those who are helping
in manufacturing. Because manufacturing
here
creates jobs for our people, but also you have something to save and something to make in the pocket.
All right.
So for me, I think moving forward, we have to be asking, for example, the coming budget. It should be telling us on how much money it is injecting into people who are in informal sector, so they can have where to for example, to borrow. Because you can't imagine, money lenders are charging 36% of interest on every money given. Commercial banks are charging 20% interest. So the budget should be telling us where Ugandans can access money, which is cheap in terms of borrowing, and they invest and transform themselves.
Okay.
So to me, that would be really very, very critical.
All right, Sarah Bireete and Kassim Kamugisha, I'm at the bottom of the hour, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to say the Kickstarter is done. Since I am the speaker here, let me adjourn. We shall have these conversations in the next week. It's been a pleasure having you, Sarah Bireete, Chief Executive Director, I must say, at the Center for Constitutional Governance, and many thanks to Kassim Kamugisha, Deputy RCC Nakawa, for making time and emboldening our understanding of matters what the President spoke about in the State of the Nation address. I do hope the conversations do continue online, and if there is any point that is not clear, the Daily Monitor has exclusive analysis of the State of the Nation address. Do get yourself a copy at only 2,000 Uganda shillings. You can also get the e-paper and be abreast with these matters so that you have the truth with you and you are armed. Next, we shall be speaking at Uganda Film Festival, and my colleague Idris Matu will be at hand to handle that. So let me be out and stay put, because that conversation is very important, even when the President omitted anything creative and film in his speech.